Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce this commencement speaker, Mr. James Callaway, or as he told me before we came in to the room this morning, said, feel free to call me Jimbo. I was called Jimbo when I was a youngster. It followed me all the way through school, even at A-State. Even his grandchildren call him Jimbo or Bobo. So, Jimbo, we welcome you. Jim is a 1968 graduate of Arkansas State University. He has a major in business administration, a minor in journalism, and he says that both of those have helped him immensely in his career. He was named a distinguished alum in 2007. While he was here, he was a four-year letterman on the baseball team, played third base. But after he graduated in 1968, he started a successful career in the telecommunications arena, worked across the country, several different positions. He retired in 2011 as the Senior Executive Vice President for Executive Operations for AT&T. And in honor of him, AT&T Foundation sponsored a faculty fellowship in his name and a scholarship endowment for business students in his name. And I heard comments from the deans this morning how much the faculty and students have appreciated those gifts. Jim is currently on the board of directors for the San Antonio Spurs in sports entertainment, so he's still very much engaged. He and his family live in the San Antonio area, but we're delighted to have you, Jimbo Callaway, as our speaker today.
Thank you very much, Greg. That was a very, very kind introduction. Extremely kind. As I was thinking about what he was saying, I was thinking about all those years that I had with AT&T, and it really reminds me of how old I am, so my apologies about that. I'm really honored to be your commencement speaker. When Dr. Hudson asked me to speak, it felt kind of like a daunting task to be able to connect with you recent graduates. And so I thought about finding some inspiration somewhere, so I thought back to my graduation day, 47 years ago, and I remember the day vividly, standing on the track with all my friends waiting to get our diploma at the old Cays Stadium, which is on the other side of, was on the other side of campus. And I thought about the commencement speaker to get some nurturing from what the commencement speaker said, but for the life of me, not only could I not remember what the commencement speaker said, but I couldn't remember the commencement speaker. So needless to say, that took a lot of pressure off of me in terms of trying to connect with you all for sure. You know, many of you grads are sitting here already with your immediate futures planned. You're probably going to law school, grad school, first job, whatever the case may be. Many of you may be sitting here not quite sure what the next step is, maybe not have the next job lined up. That was certainly the case for me. On graduation day, I wasn't exactly sure what the future held for me, but the next 6 weeks meant a great deal to me and to my future. And I just want to try to take you through that very, very quickly. On graduation day was somewhere around June 1st, 1968, and our baseball team went to the College Division World Series that week after, and the week after that, the Major League Professional Baseball Draft was to be held. There was a moment in my life when I thought I was a prospect. I could have signed a baseball contract out of high school, but I remember sitting with my dad at Lamar Porter Field in Little Rock right before an American Legion game, and I asked my dad what he thought I should do, and he gave me a very quick three-word answer. It was go to college. And he had a great value for education, and I often thought about that, about what a value he had, but I also thought, well, I wonder if he was thinking about my playing because he saw me play a lot. Maybe he meant go to college and don't worry about professional baseball. But by the time I got out of college, I like to think I played my way out of being a prospect. So when Major League Baseball day rolled around in terms of the draft, the phone didn't ring. And I was fairly realistic about it going into it, but nevertheless, it was a cold slap in the face because I was getting married in 3 weeks and I had no job. And it hit me that I need a job really bad. And so Vietnam War was going on. It was really kind of hard to get some companies to talk to you, but my dad was a CPA. He became a CPA kind of on his own way back, and some sort of a one-man office. So I asked my dad if I could help him until I figured out exactly what I was going to do with my life, and he said sure. He had always, by the way, wanted me to take over his business. He wanted me to become an accountant and take over his business someday, and so he was very happy when I decided to help him, so to speak. And I was real happy about that too until I got my first check, and it wasn't very much. But I think it was reflective of kind of what I was worth to him, which wasn't very much at that time. But wedding day rolled around, and I was leaving my mom and dad's house to go to the church. I reached in the mailbox, and in the mailbox was a letter from Uncle Sam that basically said, "Dear James, you have 10 days to report for your physical." I was getting ready to be drafted, and in those days, just about everybody would get drafted. So that was another cold slap in the face. So my wife, Paula, now wife of 47 years, we had a very short honeymoon. We couldn't afford a long one. And when we got back, just by happenstance, we had dinner one night with a couple who had lived in Blauville, where my wife had finished her senior year, and my wife, Paula, had babysat for him, and the husband worked for Southwestern Bell, oddly enough. And he asked me what I was going to do with my future, and I said, not sure, hard to get people to talk to me. Well, he said, we'll talk to you. He said, I heard there's an opening in the management program at Southwestern Bell. Here's the telephone number of the person to call if you're interested. Not sure there's an opening, but call him roughly 8 o'clock on Monday morning. So I'll never forget sitting in my mom and dad's house at 8 o'clock Monday morning with the telephone. It's probably one of the rotary dial things at the time, the telephone in front of me. And 8 o'clock rolled around. I thought, well, it's a little presumptuous to call at 8. So at 8:01, I called. And the individual who was running the program says, yes, Jim. He says, we just had an individual turn down our last opening in this program. He said, I got a whole host of candidates, but you're welcome to come down and interview. And I did. I went down and interviewed, and then another interview, and several interviews later, I was offered the job. So I went home, pretty happy, and decided, needed to tell my dad. And so I told my dad, and he spent a few minutes. Keep in mind, he kind of wanted me to come in and take over his business, and he tried to talk me out of it a little bit. And at the end of the conversation, he realized that I really wanted to go do this. I felt like this was something that was going to make me happy. And all my life, he had said, you got to do what makes you happy. He said, what made me happy was accounting. You've got to do what makes you happy. He kind of wanted me to do accounting too, but whatever makes you happy. And so at the end of the conversation, he kind of looks at me and said, so are you quitting? And I hadn't thought of it that way. That's what I said. I said, I haven't thought of it that way, but I guess I am. He said, well, you can't quit. You're fired. So my first job out of college, I got fired by my dad. It's not as bad as it sounds. My dad and I laughed about that many, many, many times over the years before he passed away, but I really think what he was telling me is you got to go do what makes you happy. This is what made me happy. But at the end of the day, he laughed and said, but I never told you that what's going to make you happy is necessarily going to make me happy. So I think that was sort of the end of that story. But I went from being fired to the next day being hired. Started with Southwestern Bell in mid-July. Went ahead and enrolled in Army Reserve, took the military thing out of the way. So that was sort of my 6-week period in a nutshell. And so for those of you who are a little bit on the undecided side, not sure where the next job is going to be, just hang in there, because there is hope. I'm living, breathing example of there is hope for you. So again, as I thought about today, and I thought about how I connect with you graduates, I thought about what advice could I give you. And after my career of 40 plus years, It kind of boils down, I boiled it down to one thing in terms of advice for you, and it has to do with change. And it's as true today as it was when I got the advice from my first boss with Southwestern Bell. He told me that Callaway, he said, you're going to be in this business a while. He said, you're going to experience a lot of change, and you just have to be flexible when you see the change coming. And it was kind of funny at the time when I look back on it, because Southwestern Bell was very much a monopoly, not a lot of change going on at that time, but he obviously knew what he was talking about later on. We were part of the Bell system. AT&T was the parent company. This is history book stuff. I won't take very long. AT&T was a parent company, monopoly on long distance and local service. In 1984, the government broke up the monopoly. AT&T became a standalone company. Southwestern Bell Corporation was formed, became a standalone company. They competed along with other regional companies. In the early to mid-90s through early 2000, Southwestern Bell Corporation started an acquisition strategy, built up enough mass that eventually in mid-2000 we bought AT&T, which was our old original parent, and went with the name because it was such a great name. So Southwestern Bell, when I started, was about $12 billion company, 25,000 employees, big company by any stretch of the imagination. Today's AT&T is a $128 billion company, 240,000 employees, very much a national and international company, and has transformed over the years from a local telephone company to a truly wireless company. I think you grads all know AT&T is very much a wireless company. So I'm not an expert on change. I've faced a lot of change. What I would tell you is, from an advice standpoint, when you see change coming, recognize it, study it, try to figure out the positives about it, turn it into positives for yourself, and go for it, because resisting change is certainly not an option. So in closing, I would just say I'm a product of this university. I've worked all over the country, and I've worked pretty much all over the world. But I got my start. Any success that I may have had over the years really got its start right here on this campus. So you graduates, I want you to be proud of your education. I want you to be confident that you've got a great foundation on which to succeed. And I'd like to pass on my sincere congratulations and wish you all the very best in your individual journeys. Thank you.